District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Welcome to District of Conservation. I am your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. Amy, so wonderful to connect. I'm so excited for you to share your adventures as a Python Huntress and tell everyone what that's all about.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
How did you get roped into Python hunting or Python management? I think that's a better word. But where did this come from? Are you from Florida or you just randomly got interested in this? How did this come to be?
No, I'm not from Florida. I'm from actually Ohio. Then I lived in Indiana. And I will say that I didn't get roped into it. This was basically, I know as weird as it sounds, a total calling. So I've been into reptiles and amphibians, mainly snakes, my whole life, from when I was little. And it's, when my dad put me in a creek and taught me how to catch all kinds of critters. So I just had this fascination with snakes. And so they've always been part of my world, but more in the hobby capacity, right? So I was a real estate broker for 13 years prior to coming to Florida. And I was fine. I loved real estate. I was good at it. I had a big team, it was great. But then I found out that there was a problem with pythons in Florida. And I thought, wait, what? What is this? So I took a vacation, came down, ended up catching a 9-foot python. And I knew right then and there, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So within 2 months, I sold my database, packed everything up, and moved to Florida to figure out how to become a python hunter.
That trajectory is so interesting, from real estate to Python hunting. What a jump you made.
It was. And the thing was, I was not looking for something else. I loved real estate. It was awesome. I was good at it. I'd done it for so long, and all of my goals were focused on real estate. And this was not even a thing for me until it was.
But it can have an effect on real estate, actually, I guess, depending upon where you live. If you live close to the Everglades or kind of that area, some people have found them in their neighborhoods as well, right? Not just in wilderness, but even in residential communities. For sure.
Well, so far it hasn't had an impact on the real estate business down here in Florida, thankfully. Pythons don't like to be in the neighborhoods. They don't like to be around people. It's usually the people that find them in the neighborhoods are on the outskirts, and they're backed up to like a preserve, like Rookery Bay or something like that. So they get the random one coming through, but it's not a big issue at this point anyway.
To become a Python hunter, what type of credentials does it take? Like, do you have to go through tests, get certification? Can anyone choose to be it? How was it for you?
So when I moved here, I moved here in 2019. And in 2017, they started basically a pilot program. The state did to hire Python contractors, 25 of them, to go out and catch pythons to see if they would have any luck. And they did. So when I moved here in March of 2019, I didn't even know if they were going to continue the program or not. I didn't know, because nobody could tell me. They weren't sure if it was going to continue, if they were going to hire more people or what. So I just kind of came down and had to just figure it out. But the thing was, they did another hiring spree in July of 2019. So I was hired then with the next 25 people. And at that point, there weren't a ton of people interested or that really knew about it. So, and because I have such a extensive background in the reptile world, I think that's why I was hired. So, and then after that, a year later, they hired 50 more contractors, and then they limited it at that. So there's 100 contractors, Python contractors for the state of Florida that are paid to go out and hunt the pythons.
So you're one of 100.
I am not anymore. I was.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yes. So
how many do they have now? Do you know?
Do what?
Do you know how many people are contracted?
Yeah. I mean, it's still 100.
Okay.
They're not going above that basically because of access, because
yeah.
And that's a whole nother story. I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically the state doesn't pay very much to the contractors. And to be fair, it wasn't supposed to be a full-time job. It's, like, hey, after work or something, if you want to go out and catch some pythons, that'd be great. We'll pay for your gas, basically. But for me, in the summer, we have a really crazy schedule. It's, we start at dusk and get done at 3 or 4 in the morning. So I can't have a full-time job and, do that just on the side if I want to be effective. So I, as one of the top hunters for the state of Florida, I made basically under $20,000 a year. So I had to do something different. So now I actually guide python hunts. So I'm still out there as much as I was before. It's in a different capacity, and I'm actually teaching people how to do this properly, what to look for, how to do it, and still catching tons of pythons.
Incredible. And the state wants people to, and I know they're trying to incentivize businesses, but are there many operations like yours where, separate from the state and however many people they contract, is it kind of like a guiding business, a popular type of form of hunting now in Florida, you would say?
No, I wouldn't say it's popular. It's difficult. First of all, there are only a handful of people that do it. And there's different times of the year. Like this, in the winter, it's a day hunt. And so we have to take our boat to the Spoil Islands and literally jungle bust through all of this looking for the pythons that are breeding. So it's a very hard work. In the summer, of course, it's night shift, which is hard work in a different way. So there aren't many people that do it. I think some people have tried. There's probably five or six that do it legitimately. Well, mostly legitimately anyway.
It doesn't sound like an easy type of guiding business, or I would say hunting operation, because from what I know about pythons, like you said, they're very difficult to spot. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. They're omnipresent. And from what I've heard, from reading your stuff and talking to others who have done it, Mike Elfenbein, who's also done a little bit of it, maybe not to the extent you have, but he caught that really huge snake recently, a few months ago, and made the news over that. And so I know it's very difficult. So that obviously creates, a barrier to doing that. And do you know how many snakes so far? I don't know if you know the number of pythons captured, but how many are currently in existence? Do you know? Because I know they repopulate really quickly. The reproduction rates are pretty high.
They do. We don't have an exact count. It can just kind of be a guess because there's no way to really know because the Everglades are so vast. But it's they think it's probably around 500,000, possibly more.
Oh no, 500,000 already?
Yep. Well, this started back in 92. Well, first of all, there's a lot of controversy about how this started, but the bottom line is from the pet industry. So some people think it's just from people releasing their pets and their pets finding each other and doing this, which that's a whole different ball game, which probably didn't happen. But what did happen is Hurricane Andrew came through in 92 and demolished a breeding facility and sent about 900 pythons into the same general vicinity. And so that's the epicenter of this problem.
Wow. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was someone just introducing them, like what we hear. I live in the Northern Virginia area in the mid-Atlantic, and we hear about people introducing snakehead, kind of like that. So I always thought it was kind of like that introduction someone did deliberately. So I didn't realize it was because of pet snake facility crumbling as a result of a hurricane.
Yep, that's what it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. People do let them go, and that is a problem for sure. But then we get into the whole, this whole road of FWC when they decided to outlaw, the pythons and say that we couldn't have live pythons. So we can't transport a live python. So when I catch a python, I have to dispatch it on site, which is fine. But what happened was FWC said, hey, this is not going to be okay anymore. And we're going to make it, against the law for anyone to be caught with python. So a lot of people that were breeders let their snakes go after that because they didn't want to kill them. They couldn't, they had so many, they couldn't sell them, out of state legally. So a lot of them just let it go, which is not right at all. But that's what happened. But that was way, way after this was already an issue.
Incredible. And obviously these are invasive. Has there been any opposition to management? Because I know some people, this could be, any type of hunting or even any type of fishing too. You see opposition to those because of just how they're portrayed. But has there been much of opposition? I feel like invasive species management can get pretty widespread support, but do you encounter any opposition, or do people in the industry encounter opposition to snake management?
In the beginning, I think it was much more, especially from PETA, because, people don't understand that we have to do this because 98% of our mammals are gone in parts of the Everglades because the pythons have eaten them. So it's either the pythons or our native animals, and it always has to be the native animals. So I think people started, once this gained a little traction, I think people really started to see, okay, this is a problem. There is no other option. We have to do that because I will tell you this, I hate that we have to kill these pythons. I hate it. And, but, it does have to be done. And I would say about 95% of the people out there doing this are like me. We love reptiles. We have a tremendous respect for them. We're good at what we do because we're not afraid of them. We know a lot about them and we constantly want to learn. So we're a huge asset to Florida. As much as we don't like what we have to do to them, we do it very respectfully and, following, of course, all of the guidelines from the American Veterinary Association.
What are some precautions and things you have to take into account anytime you go anytime you go on a python hunt? Because I could imagine, I know obviously pythons are not venomous. Do you have to be worried about them potentially biting you or strangling you or, any like snake or human conflicts? Because I think it's probably a very dangerous ordeal to do.
Well, I tell you what, I have been bitten so many times, I could not even count. And it's the thing about these Burmese pythons. The good news is that people are not on the menu. Okay. So they don't look at us as prey or even as predators. They don't really know what to do about us. So whenever I get bitten, it's a defensive strike. So it's just quick. It's not like they're biting me and grabbing a hold of me and trying to wrap me. Right. So, don't get me wrong. I don't recommend it at all, but it's not the end of the world. And it does bleed a lot. That's kind of the worst part of it. But as far as them wrapping, so here's something. If I'm ever in a situation where I've got a big snake and I'm by myself and I've got it, behind the head, the way that you're supposed to catch them, and it starts wrapping me and I get uncomfortable, all I have to do is let go of the snake and it will unravel itself and try to take off. So then I can just grab it again in a different way. So I'm sure that there's that killer python out there that's like, maybe I will try this girl today. She might be a good snack, but so far, nobody's been attacked or eaten or anything in Florida by these pythons.
Oh, I wasn't expecting anyone to be eaten. I know they just sometimes can be a little aggressive if you provoke them, like any snake. But it sounds more preferable than encountering venomous snakes. I do not like the eastern rattlesnake. I come from California, so we had diamondbacks, and that terrified me running anytime, for school and having to do track and field, and always terrified me. So if I had to choose between the snakes, I think I would want to be near pythons over venomous ones.
Yes. All day long, for sure.
And your efforts have been covered by some pretty interesting news outlets. I think the New York Times has solicited your comments and kind of perspective on that. What other news outlets have taken an interest in your work too?
Yeah, well, the New York Times actually came out on a hunt with me.
Oh, they shadowed you?
Yeah. We caught them. Nice. That was pretty cool. I've been in Business Insider, LA Times. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Fox News, a lot of Fox News. CNN, Reader's Digest. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
And when the New York Times recently shadowed you, what did you show them? Like, what were they really taken aback by or really intrigued by what was going on? Kind of just what you've been describing about the typical hunt, or was there something extraordinary that occurred when they were shadowing you?
Well, they shadowed me during the Python Challenge, the annual Python Challenge that the state puts on. And it's once a year, usually in August. and you pay $25 or something. You have to take an online quiz, and then you can come down to Florida and hunt the pythons and try to get a prize. So there's like 30 grand in prizes for it. Here's what I'll tell you, and this is what I told the New York Times too, is that the pythons don't come out. They don't follow their normal behavioral patterns when there are so many people here. I think 1,500 people signed up or something. And there are not many areas that you can drive and find these pythons. And that's what you have to do at night. They spend 85% of their time not moving. So we have to wait for the 15% of the time that they are on the move. And you can't just walk through the swamp in the summer and find them. You'll never find them. So we have to drive the roads and levees waiting for them to come out. And when there's so many people on these levees and these roads, they don't follow their behavioral patterns. So it's really counterintuitive really to this Python challenge to get rid of the pythons, but we don't catch as many during that time as we normally would if there weren't 1,500 extra people here.
Incredible. And I bet the bounties, yeah, you mentioned $30,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot of chump change for winning.
Sure. So that is. And it's there's different categories for the prizes and things like that, but at the end of the day, I'll explain this. When in the 2 weeks prior to the competition, I caught 31 pythons. In the 10 days of the competition, I caught 3. And that's not because other people were getting them. It's because they were not coming out. Right. So, as far as, is it worth it for me? Absolutely not. I don't think they should do the challenge. I mean, I get it. It's more for awareness. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, if they would just let the hunters do their job, we'd do it much better than the general public.
How does python management factor into greater conservation efforts? Because invasives management does play an integral role with that in the greater scheme of things. But could you explain for listeners, what does it do for conservation? Obviously, it stops them from, ingesting native wildlife. Probably it's better for both, flora and fauna. So describe what would happen and how the environment would be bolstered with them being removed from the landscape.
Well, we go back to being what we were before. So like I said earlier, 98% of the mammals are gone in parts of the Everglades. That's a huge number. Birds, they're eating the wading birds and the migratory birds. They're literally eating everything in their path. They have voracious appetites. We don't even know what the the damage is to the ecosystem, because whenever you take anything out, like you take these mammals out, like whether they're raccoons or rats or rabbits or whatever, you take them out of the ecosystem and, that's it. It changes it. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like at this point, but it's going to change it. So, people come down to Florida. I mean, I've had people tell me that they remember when, they would look up in the sky and the birds, there were so many birds, it was like sunset in the middle of the day. I've never seen that in my life down here, so it's really sad.
The key deer, right? I don't know if what's the species? I mean, there's white-tailed deer, of course, in Florida, and I know the key deer are in the Florida Keys, but do key deer inhabit the Everglades? Remind me if they do.
No, they're just in Key West.
Okay, just in Key West.
Now there are pythons in Key West now.
Are there now in Key West? Okay, so people are worried about the key deer potentially being
I haven't
by them?
heard that they are, but they should be probably, because we find there aren't many 16-plus footers that we find that don't have deer hooves in their stomachs.
Have they gone after livestock? I think livestock may be too big of a target for
No,
pythons.
It's not. I mean, not cows, but goats and...
okay, wow.
Yeah, sheep and all that, and pigs, for sure, pigs. Well, and that's the other thing, too. We have invasive wild hogs here.
Yes.
And the pythons definitely eat the wild hogs. The hogs, though, depending on size, will also eat the pythons, but nobody eats enough of each other to make a difference in either population.
So the python is higher on the hierarchy of invasive species over hogs. That's funny.
Yes. Oh, yes. I know. Well, and we caught, it was last year, we were down south in Southern Glades, and we caught a 14-footer that was 105 pounds. Now, that's a very fat 14-foot python. And there was sign of wild hog everywhere.
Wow.
So she was all fat and happy because she was eating a lot of pigs.
That sounds like a good bet. I mean, I want to go hog hunting again. It's a very fun activity, but that is so fascinating that, yeah, they're competing with each other, but the python proves to be far more victorious when it comes to dominating and eating. That's so fascinating. Amy, what has been the biggest python to date that you've caught?
17.3, 110 pounds is the biggest one I've caught. And I caught her by myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, and what's the largest one in Florida caught to date so far? Are you
19
that record?
feet.
19 feet.
So 19 feet exactly is the longest. And then 215 pounds is the heaviest, but that wasn't the longest.
Wow.
So we've got some big snakes here. I mean, here's the thing. They have voracious appetites. It takes a python 3 years to get to be 10 feet, and it takes 200 mammals and birds to get it there. Right. So that's a lot of animals. And these things live for 20, 25 years. And nothing is off. The only thing that the pythons don't eat are each other and other snakes, turtles, and fish. So rats, squirrels, bobcats, deer, and everything in between, all kinds of wading birds, alligators, they eat it all.
They eat alligators? Has anyone captured, like a National Geographic style video of a python devouring a gator? That'd be super interesting to see.
Yeah, I know that there are videos out there that have that they have caught that on film, but not in National Geographic style, I don't think. And I know that there are, like the Naples Conservancy cut open a python when they were doing a necropsy, and there was a 6-foot gator in it.
My, oh my, that's crazy that they'll even eat gators. I mean, I would think that'd be too hard to chew and swallow.
Well, they don't really chew, they swallow it whole. But here's the thing. The birds and the gators aren't necessarily like the first thing that they would want to eat. They want the juicy fat mammals. But on the East Coast, they've eaten all the mammals. So the only thing left are the birds and the gators. So that's what they're eating. But if you'll notice on some of the maps, the pythons are heading northwest. They're following the food. So over in Big Cypress and Naples, we've got a lot more dry land over here. So we have a lot more mammals, and our snakes, our pythons get a lot bigger because there's so much more to eat.
Has there ever been a report because you have a growing black bear population, have they had conflicts with the pythons? Would pythons, you think, eat the black bears? Is that a stretch to even think?
It's not a stretch. I mean,
no.
Nothing's ever off the table. There haven't been any reports. I don't think so. I think bears are more intelligent. Along with the panthers, we've never found a panther in a python. Not to say that hasn't happened, because I'm sure it has. But the problem with these pythons and eating these natives is that the natives aren't instinctually afraid of them like they should be, because they're not from here, right? So they don't know that this giant python is a bad thing. With the panthers that are more intelligent, with the bears, I feel like they are more, I don't know what this is, but I'm pretty sure I shouldn't like it and I should go away. I think that they have more of that instinct because of their intelligence. I could be wrong. That's something I'm totally making up, that I think. It's not been proven, but we have found pythons with bear claws, wounds in them. So I think that there probably have been some altercations, but I'm
no successful ingesting.
That a python would eat a big bear, because if the bear was small enough to eat like a cub, I'm pretty sure the mom would mess it up.
Oh yeah. You don't mess with mama bears. That's true. And I bet you a panther would put up a good fight too.
I'm sure.
That's so fascinating. Amy, is there anything else you want to mention about your work, ways for people to follow, about managing these invasive species, or any final takeaways you want to impart to the listeners?
Yes. The first thing is that this really is not management. We'll probably never be able to even manage the pythons. What we're doing, we're giving it our best with the only thing that really works, which is hunting, and it's not going to be the solution. But the thing is, there's so much research going on right now trying to figure out how to be more effective and how to do this. So, we can't give up. We can't just not catch these pythons, even though we might be just prolonging extinction. But if we can do that, extinction of our mammals, but if we can do that for long enough until they can come up with a better way and more effective way to get rid of these pythons, then, we just have to keep getting out there and doing it. So I also think that, if a lot of people don't know how to do it, they want to go out and they want to, find a python, and it's a lot easier said than done. These things are cryptic. They are very difficult to find. It takes an average of 12 hours to catch one python. So even though they're everywhere, they're also nowhere. So it's a very difficult problem that we're dealing with.
A very aloof predator. I think most of them want to be like that. They don't want to be found.
Oh, for
That's
sure.
how they can go about their way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's so funny because they will literally be right in front of you. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you will not see it. I mean, I had
camouflage well?
Oh, perfectly. And so when I caught the 17-footer, I'm driving down the road at night by myself, hunting, and it's like midnight. I see the python periscoping. So she's up about 2 feet off the ground. So I saw her white belly. So I pull my truck over. By the time I get to her, she goes down, right? I know where she is. She is 17 feet, and I still couldn't find her right away. I still had to look. It probably took me a good minute or two to actually find the snake. And then I saw her pattern through the leaves or through the grass. And then I kind of went up about 2 feet, and then I saw the head, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the biggest head that I've ever seen. But, you can't hesitate. So I just jumped on her. But I mean, that's a 17-foot snake that's right on Highway 41 that I knew where she was, and I still couldn't find her.
That's incredible. Wow. You've shared a lot of interesting stuff. And I think most people are like, women are doing this. And I think that's really cool that more women are doing this, because people think, oh, men are usually python hunters, but no, women are doing this. And you seem to be a great example of women doing it well, Amy. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you're doing, especially your part to help kind of mitigate the impacts of invasive species like pythons, and just sharing how unique this type of activity is. So I really appreciate it, and you telling your story here.
Well, thanks for letting me tell my story. I appreciate it, Gabrielle.
Thanks for listening to District of Conservation. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go leave us some reviews on Apple and Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played. Your feedback will help us reach more people, and I love to know what is on your mind after each episode. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat or a guest announcement, because that is our way of updating all of you listeners, and we have just hit 1,000 followers on Instagram for the podcast account. Thank you very much. And if you have any guest suggestions or topics you want to hear on the show, I am all ears. I would love to hear your feedback there. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.